This video is going to go over our fourth project, which is a project about writing and evaluating instructions. So as always, to find the instructions and the information for the project, go to the modules page and scroll down. There is a project overview and a set of project instructions. One other thing just to kind of point out on this module page, there is a module for instructions that includes some writing instructions, an overview. There's some examples of quick start instructions, and then there's some other links of sample instructions that you can look at to kind of see what makes a strong instruction. So the project for overview, as always, contains a whole bunch of information that you're going to need, including supporting resources for your deliverables. This, just like Project 3, is a team-based project. You do have to work in a group, and students who don't complete the team objectives will lose 20%. This project, you will need to do team formation. If you're using the same team as you had in Project 3, you still should complete the team formation worksheet. You'll complete it for kind of this new project and make any adjustments that you might want to make your team formation and your team charter more effective. For this, you'll do an audience analysis. This is a research-based project, so you will need to do a preliminary source memo where you're going to be working on PGCC sources. If you don't know how to use the PGCC databases, if you had an English 1010 class or another composition class at a different school that didn't show you how to use databases here at the college, it's really important that you contact the professor as soon as you possibly can, because we need to get you caught up. So there's lots of information here about library sources that you can look over if you need a quick review. You'll be writing a short report on the best practices for creating instructions. There's information about report types, including headings and making tables of contents in Microsoft Word. It'll talk about how you evaluate instructions and how you revise instructions. But let's take a look at the more specific instructions for the project. As always, make sure that you are saving a copy of the instructions or downloading it or emailing it to yourself so that you have it offline. This is another larger project. It's worth 25% of your final grade. It's a bigger project than the proposal project because it is research-based. We're going to base most of the project on the materials in the textbook document-based cases for technical communication, so you will need that textbook in order to do this project. This project's going to ask you to research best practices for creating instructions. It's really important that you are careful about the sources you pull out. There are instructions and designing instructions. And then there are a ton of articles about something called instructional design. Instructional design is teaching. It is pedagogy and it's classroom practices. It is not the same thing as how you write instructions or procedures for doing something or using a product. So when you're looking at your resources, be really careful that you are looking at resources about the correct topic. Together with your team, you're going to prepare a brief informational report about creating instructions for new students. This is not quite as long as your 6-page research paper in English 1010, but it should be comprehensive enough that it includes 5 sources. Then once you know how to write instructions, once you have a good level of knowledge and detail about instructions, you're going to analyze a case study, including engineers' notes and diagrams on a draft of some startup instructions. And then as a team, you're going to be revising those startup instructions and designing a better set of instructions. So as you can see, there's a couple big deliverables. Your best practices report is worth 70 points. The revision of the instruction is worth 50, and the evaluation of the instructions is worth 40. So you'll need case 6 in the document-based cases for technical communication textbook, but be really careful because this assignment differs from some of the tasks in the textbook. Pay attention to the instruction sheet. We're not doing all of the tasks in the same way. So to get started, contact your group members by posting on the group homepage in Canvas and provide your contact information. If you're working with the same group, you still need to do this step. Your group homepage in Canvas is how I track your interaction and your group involvement. You need to complete the team formation document. Again, even if you're using the same group or the same team, you need to update that document with any revisions. Make sure that you read the situation overview carefully. This scenario is based on a healthcare industry product, but it's not necessary to be familiar with healthcare or medicine to complete the project. However, you might have to do a little bit of Googling just to make sure you understand what the product is and what it's talking about. You'll complete your audience analysis, and really you're going to look at who is using the instructions. When and how are startup instructions used, and what kind of knowledge or experience do the machine's users already have? Right, so startup instructions are those really brief instructions that you get, that it's not the complete, user's manual. It's just a little snippet of how to get started, usually on the product itself, or sometimes in Apple products, it's included as like a single sheet of paper to get you to turn the device on. So you really need to think about what they already know and what you can leave out and what you have to put in to make it workable. The biggest part of this project, though, is the research. You're going to research best practices for writing and designing instructions. You need to use the PGCC database. You can use online resources, but at least some of the resources have to come from our databases and be scholarly in nature. You're going to present your research to the instructor or professor in an informational report. So the audience is very kind of academic almost here. And you'll deliver that report as an attachment to an email. Once you've done your report and you're now kind of an expert in what makes instructions good instructions, you're going to evaluate a set of instructions. So figures 6.3 and 6.4 show you kind of a sample draft of instructions and a short diagram that an engineer created to look at the model of the product that you're going to be creating instructions for. And what you need to do is propose specific revisions based on your knowledge of best practices. Then you're going to put those proposed revisions into play by revising those instructions into a new set of startup instructions. You need to consider both content and design, and you'll submit the newly designed instructions with a cover email or memo detailing the changes and justifying the choices you made. So again, we're doing that thing where you evaluate, you say not only like what's wrong with it, but why something is wrong and how it needs to be improved. And then you justify your improvements by not only explaining what you changed, but why you changed it and how those changes really meet your specific audience's needs. There's a lot of information here about deliverables. All deliverables for this project will be done as a team. You can work either synchronously or asynchronously using, cloud-based documents, but the group will submit one document for each. Again, if you are having issues with a group member, please let me know as soon as possible. Everybody in the group is going to get a single grade unless I get some sort of information that helps me get your group back on track. So there's descriptions of all these deliverables. The team formation document, audience analysis documents are the same as we've been doing all semester. These shouldn't be new for you. The preliminary source memo is very, very similar to the annotated bibliography that you did in English 1010. You're just going to put it in memo form. You're going to include at least 7 sources. Feel free to divide those up among your group members, but definitely make sure that each group member approves of and is responsible for all the sources. As I said, you can use general internet sources, but at least 4 of the sources on that memo have to come from the library database. Begin your memo with a direct opening that gives a brief overview of the contents. You'll summarize your most important findings in that opening. Then you're going to list your sources alphabetically. We're going to use APA format. Beneath each source citation, write a brief summary of the source and explain how it will help your informational report. Again, this is really similar to that annotated bibliography you did in English 1010. Do not plagiarize or copy abstracts. Any and all writing in this document should be original, and any plagiarism will result in instant failure of the document. You're going to use your knowledge of reports, both short informal reports and longer reports, to design a report that is accessible for your audience. In this report, you need to list at least 5 best practices for creating instructions and explain how to use them in the creation of instructions. You should include a section on pitfalls or warnings about what not to do in your instructions. So The report format, categories, headings, that's really up to your team, but you are going to be in charge of designing your report so the information is easily accessible, either with a table of contents, headings, or other navigational aids. Make sure that you're referring to the chapters on formal and informal reports in the textbook for ideas on how to organize your content. So the test here really is, can you create a deliverable or document that allows you to deliver a lot of information very clearly so that any audience could go in and find the exact information that they're interested in or the information that they need. Designing the format is going to be really important, that you can think critically about what you're including and how you're going to highlight the most important things you're including. You are allowed to use examples or visual elements to illustrate your findings. I've provided lots of websites that have sample instructions or sample startup instructions. Feel free to pull from those or from other examples that you find. And this report needs to use at least 5 sources to support your findings. All sources should be cited in APA format, and you need to include a reference page. Once you're done with the report, you'll be evaluating instructions. This is figure 2 and figure 6.2 and document 6.4 in that case studies textbook. Evaluate the engineer sketch and the draft of the instructions for the Pretty 5 machine, that's the fictional machine that you're working on. And really consider how well these instructions would work as startup instructions. Like, could you stick these on the side of a machine and would they actually be effective and useful? Write an email to the project manager that evaluates those instructions, and then you're going to suggest specific improvements. For every recommendation, be sure to include clear and specific reasons for why that improvement is necessary, and feel free to refer back to those best practices you've researched. Make sure your email is formatted correctly and organized as stated here. And then finally, your last task, you're almost there, is a revision of the instructions. You're going to actually do a revision and create those startup instructions to make them effective and appropriate for the audience and context where they will appear. So again, these startup instructions are going to go on the side of the monitor or the machine. You need to make sure that what you include is appropriate for that situation and for the audience that will be using it. Design the instructions as a sticker that can be applied to the machine's body. If you're not familiar with these machines, feel free to do some research to figure out how big these machines are. What are your size constraints? How big can the sticker actually be? You can use Canva or other desktop publishing applications to create the instructions so they're well formatted. And then finally, you're going to deliver the instructions on a cover message, either an email or memo to the project manager. Make sure you explain the changes and the design choices, and make sure you explain why you made those changes. So everything about this is not only doing the work, but being able to explain how and why you've done that. We don't have tests in this semester, so really being able to clearly justify your choices serves as our testing. So this is kind of a big project. It has a lot of moving parts to it, and it does use a lot of research. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need help or support with any of it. I'm here to help. Let me know if you have any questions.